Blessed assurance, Jesus is mine. Oh, what a foretaste of glory divine, heir of salvation, purchase of God, born of his Spirit, washed in his blood. This is my story, this is my song, praising my Savior all the day long. This is my story, this is my song, praising my Savior all the day long.
As we continue our conversations regarding joy, today we're going to look at an area that can really rob each of us of a joyful life, and it's also one of the most difficult to deal with. We have looked at how circumstances can rob us of joy and how our own words can drain us of that joy. Today, I want to look at how things can also rob us of this inner joy. When I say things, I'm talking about those things of this world that are attractive to us. The things that catch our eye and will hold our fancy. Things like money, success, possessions. You fill in the blanks. It's those things that we like. We can't seem to help it because we live in a culture that puts great value on things. And it's only human nature to desire them. Things and stuff are not inherently bad, but our pursuit of these things, that can be the thief that robs us of our joy. Paul speaks of how we actually straddle two different worlds. On the one hand, we have a foot firmly planted in the temporal world. That is the world we live in, the world we see, the world we can touch, even able to acquire some of it. On the other is the eternal world. We can't see that, but we are all faced with it. It's God's kingdom, and that kingdom transcends time and space, even that of the temporal. And although we declare ourselves to be citizens of the eternal kingdom, we still have one foot firmly planted in the temporal. Along our journey of life, we can't help but focus on the temporal things, to want, to have them, to have strong desires for what we have acquired. And this poses a problem. Paul says we save up the things of this world and forget about saving for the eternal. It is part of our belief. It is part of our culture. All of us fall into that trap. There's a Presbyterian minister in California. His name is John Ortberg. You probably heard of him. He tells a great story. This is a story about how he and his grandmother loved to play the board game Monopoly. As a child, he would play with her often, but she would always win. In fact, she took great pride and pleasure in beating her grandson over and over and over again. She would tell him, though, that one day he would learn how to play the game. Ortberg goes on to say that he played Monopoly all one summer with a friend of his, and he finally learned the secret of how to play, and especially how to win. Acquire as much property as you can, build as many hotels, save as much money quickly as possible. He could not wait for the opportunity to play with his grandmother again. Then that next fall, he took on his grandmother in another game of Monopoly, and he soundly defeated her. He took everything she had and he won the game. Then, basking in his victory, he tells how his grandmother taught him the real life lesson of the game of Monopoly. You see, you accumulate all you can. You beat your opponent. You take everything they have, and then it all goes back in the box. It's the story of life. It's the story of our lives. When we have finished our earthly journey, it's over. And regardless of our financial skill, each of us and everything goes right back in the box. The cash you retained, the hotels you built, the property that you owned. Things have only become a distraction, a diversion. They were somewhat of a futile attempt to be happy. How much better, Paul would say, to keep your eye on the eternal. It's like that parable of the rich fool that we learn about in the book of Luke. That young man who spent all of his time acquiring so much. And he did acquire so much that he had to begin tearing down his old barns and build big, newer and bigger barns in order to hold all that he acquired. Year after year, he accumulated all this stuff. One day, he said, one day I'll stop accumulating and I'll start enjoying life. But that's not the way the story ended. He died. And all that he had acquired, well, you can say they just all went back in the box. To accumulate things will not bring true joy, but only a passing glimpse of joy. And the pursuit of things will actually drain us of that joy that we have. For joy does not come from what we possess, but come when we are possessed by the love and nurture of God. Joy does not come when we seek after things, but when we seek after the righteousness of God and the life He has planned for you and for me. Joy is not accumulation that we can obtain, quite the opposite. Joy is the source from which pleasure and satisfaction will flow. Joy is not found, but received. It is far more than just a gift from God. It is in fact God giving Himself. But like any gift, we can ignore it and lose it. The more we satisfy our desires and fill our senses with the things of this world, the less room we have to be filled with the joy from God. He is a gracious God, and He provides His own with the bounty of His hand. God is the creator of good, and we have access to that. The point boils down to the object of our desires. If our desires are focused on the temporal, we will miss the bounty of the eternal. If we focus on the eternal gifts, our hearts will be filled with joy. Join us in our next segment on joy, and I'm sure you'll be glad that you did. Blessings.
Perfect submission, all is at rest. I in my Savior am happy and blessed, watching and